going from bits to atoms, first we'll talk about what OnBeep is doing. We're building beautiful, wearable collaboration. And we're coming later this year. So this talk is not about our product, although I definitely encourage you to sign up at unbeatable.com to find out when we launch. This really is a talk about the lessons that so many people seem to struggle with, and that we've certainly had to go through learning processes from our own backgrounds, mine at Chef, and Sylvia's shipping at Apple and at Amazon, physical products in the real world. I'm going to provide real data, in some cases, from our accounting books, so just know that. So first thing is the core idea behind people. They seem to believe that it's, step one, great idea, and then you add crowdfunding to that. Step two, you press this magic China button, and a few days later, product begins to come out, and then you profit, right? So this is how it works in manufacturing. This is not true. This is not how it actually works in manufacturing. It generally takes $1,000 to $10,000 to get to a proof of concept. This is the Radio Shack Make magazine level product. 1 to 3 people, 1 to 2 months. Prototype stage, this is something that you actually would show to other people, 10,000 to 150,000, 1 to 5 people, 2 to 6 months. And in production, $1 million, many people, or $100,000 to $1 million, many people, and 6 to 24 months. Longer, much longer, if you did a big successful crowdfunding project. At OnBeep, it took us 3 months, 4 people, and $20,000 to get from proof of concept, this is our very first day, to the OnBeep 1. Exactly a year ago was our first production prototype board. A few days later, you can see Neil Gerling, our electrical engineer who hand soldered everything, looking extraordinarily happy. So from 12 months, so in order to get to the next stage of our product, 12 months total, 14 people, and $1 million. And so when we talk about getting to this stage of product, and I think you're all going to love it when you see it, the easy part is the proto stage, which is the part that people tend to say is how you get from Kickstarter to your product shipped a little bit later. The hard part comes here, obviously, where you see burn rate increasing massively, and a lot of different. You need $1 million over 12 months in order to for us to get out into the market.
I joined OnBeep in November of last year, and as you can see in December, our burn rate kind of went up by 30%. This is really because I made a Jesse, this is what I want for Christmas, but I want it before Christmas. Everything that I wanted costed anywhere from $150 to $30,000. And this is not even counting software. People who do software often say, well, there's a free and open source version of everything. That doesn't really exist in the hardware development world just yet. And I use SolidWorks, our electrical engineer uses Altium. These licenses cost $4,000 per seat. And multiply that by the number of hardware engineers you have, and you probably have maxed out your credit card.
So how do you pay for this? In general, you get credit cards and foolishness, followed by, to get through prototype, you get to angels, syndicates, and seed funds in order to go from prototype, that's like a working board, through to the production stages. And then in general, we find people actually raising full-scale venture capital in order to get out and into the market. Crowdfunding works in order to fund the costs of production, but not the cost of getting there, at least for hardware startups. And so this is something that many people are confused by, and it's a very real thing. We raised $1 million on AngelList, total of 85 investors, led by Gil Penchina's syndicate. He's amazing. If you can take a look at the syndicate programs, it's changing the world, as well as some prominent figures, including Alistair Kroll, a prominent Canadian, who was willing to back us. There is a shortcut. Highway 1 is a program designed to accelerate startups to the end of the prototype phase. It provides, gets you ready for crowdfunding and more traditional funding by taking out the lessons that we all learned in the first 6 months at OnBeep and providing many of the tools that Sylvia charged to my credit card. So prototyping is easy, getting much easier. Sylvia's going to talk to you now about how manufacturing is hard.
A lot of my friends in San Francisco are iOS developers. This is not a surprise to anybody. So I'm a mechanical engineer by training and, the odd one out. My friends often ask me, why do you go to China for weeks on end? Can't you just 3D print everything here? That's what everyone does, right? Well, my answer to them is that I'm not selling things on Etsy. What OnBeep is building is not a one-off artisanal product. We're trying to ship at least 1 million units that are consistent in quality to customers all around the world. 3D printing I love 3D printing, don't get me wrong, but ultimately it's a prototyping process. If you're printing something, small, consumer electronic size, things like this now cost $20 to do. It's a couple hours or overnight if you're doing larger parts. The cosmetic appearance of these things can often be pretty good. And if you're willing to invest in time and a little handiwork to make them even better, you can even use these kind of prototypes for fundraising. And this is what a lot of Kickstarter people present on their campaigns. However, the drawback of 3D printed parts is that you really cannot scale them efficiently. The cost of 3D printing comes from machine time and amount of material you're using. So large parts are very expensive, take a very long time to produce. There's really nowhere you can cut costs. There's still a limited amount of material and finishes. You can't really do transparent materials or really vibrant colors yet. And affordable printers that startups buy do not produce good prototypes. A $30,000 printer can only prove a very rough concept. If you want something that you can assemble into a product, put PCBs in, seal it tight, ship it to a customer, you're looking at least $100,000 worth of machinery. Most of you have probably never seen an injection mold. This is a mold used to make Lego bricks. So how simple are Lego bricks, right? Rectangles with cylinders on them. But the tool to produce it likely costed at least $10,000 and took much longer to design than the Lego pieces themselves. But a tool like this can produce at least 10,000 Legos, likely much more over its lifetime. Injection molding right now is the most effective way to produce plastic parts. The advantage comes from multiplexing. You can do 2 parts in one mold, or 16, or 32, just depends on how big a mold you want to make. And every part costs, as little as pennies. It's really just material cost. The output rate is incredibly fast. Every time you pour liquid plastic into a mold, have it come out, this process takes a minute. So you're looking at making hundreds to thousands of parts every single day. The quality of the finishes can be very high as long as you made your tool right and tune the processes right. You can do, glass-like glossy surfaces. You can do, fake leather, fake wood grain, what have you, and the widest range of material imaginable. But injection molding ultimately is a very hard engineering discipline. The cost to make the tool is, at least $5,000 in China. And we're looking at a 4 to 6 lead time. So there's design time, there's machining time, there's tuning time. This involves really tight-knit collaborations from engineers of all different disciplines. The part, designing parts is often the easy part for me, but designing the tool, getting the process right, this takes weeks. Ultimately, 3D printing is testing on your laptop in dev, and injection molding is pushing to production. If you want to make millions of the same product, you have to do injection molding. Hardware manufacturing is about entrusting the toughest part of your business to complete strangers. So I like to keep an eye on these strangers. Some people just push the China button and see what comes out. I like to go behind the box and see, who's this Wizard of Oz. I like to go check out assembly processes. And what I look for is the kind of fixtures they're using on the lines. Why do I care about fixtures so much? So in Shenzhen, in the areas around Shenzhen, Dongguan, Guangzhou, the density of factories is incredible. Headphone factories across the street from other headphone factories. So these factory managers have, a problem. The high turnover rate of employees, of operators, is really, really high. Often after a long holiday, like the Chinese New Year, which is 1 week, 50% of your employees just don't come back. Seriously, they all go to Foxconn or something.
Just press the China button.
Yeah,
just press the China button.
So you really cannot rely on, an employee, an operator getting more and more proficient at your process and make your product better and better. You have to assume that every month, the girl who's putting the sticker on your product is going to be a new person. So how do you get around, new operator error? Because, training kind of happens sometimes. Sometimes they don't. You make good fixtures that are intuitive to use. Somebody with an elementary school education looks at your fixture and say, that's exactly what I'm supposed to do. So process design is a very essential part of product design. You can't just, design something, send it to China, and expect to get what you designed back. You have to actually really keep an eye on every single step of the process and design a lot of them yourselves.
We're going to need to skip a little bit ahead.
Yeah. So designing consumer electronics is a pretty complicated process. They're everything from sourcing to making custom parts to assembling them and packaging everything into a beautiful box. And everything, something can go wrong at each one of these steps. Small problems at the beginning, at upstream, can snowball into really large problems downstream. So the time that you spend, quality control is a really good investment. Don't save 5 minutes by not inspecting plastic parts because they might not fit into your fixtures at final assembly stage. So here, I want to talk a little about going to China.
Yep.
So China is, a different country, third world and all this stuff. And then once you get over the 12 hours of flight, sometimes feels a lot longer in economy, 16 hours from Toronto. After you get over the food, the crowds, the weird driving, there's a lot more underneath. People communicate in very different styles. Negativity is really, really frowned upon over there. So the engineers, the factory managers will never tell you, that process that you told us to do, we can't do that. Or, your schedule is going to be delayed because we can't work nearly that fast. Nobody tells you these things. I've learned to ask questions very differently. I don't ask, is everything going to be on time? Is everything going to be okay? I ask, are there going to be delays? What are the risks that you see in my process that you cannot do? Then they give me the honest, straight-up answer, because nobody ever says no. It doesn't exist in the vocabulary. Because hardware manufacturing is about trusting complete strangers, you have to turn these strangers into your friends. So, during ramp time for Thanksgiving, they don't see, Beats is ramping for Thanksgiving. So OnBeep, I'm sorry, you guys are just going to have to do your production after New Year because we don't have any capacity. But if you show them that you respect their knowledge, you guys are really partners in this thing, not just a customer, they will be more likely to pull some strings. Picking suppliers is a very tricky business. When you're a startup, you tend to want to work with other startups who pay attention to you, who give you their time, because you're the biggest customer they got. But can your small suppliers scale with you? If you're lucky enough to scale from 10,000 units a month to 1 million units a month, can your suppliers keep up? Well, you might say, why don't I just go to a big reputable supplier to begin with? Well, the kind of component suppliers that supply Apple and Samsung might not want to talk to you at all. A lot of the times, I have to put my personal reputation on the line. I say, well, look at me. I've worked at Apple. I've worked at Amazon. I've shipped products. And I love your components because they have gone into the products of these big companies. So, work with me on this. Help me get OnBeep to 1 million units a month. Help us become one of your biggest customers.
So on the promise of greatness, we're going to be hosting office hours from 4 to 5 p.m. today. If you want to talk about making great products, how to go from, how to hit the China button, you can sign up to learn about what we're building at onbeep.com, and you can follow us on Twitter there as well. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about something fun.
Thanks.